The grace and peace of the Lord be with you all. Good morning and welcome to the Ward Living Room. Originally, we'd been planning on having a service this morning and broadcasting it on Facebook, but the news late yesterday changed all that, so we're doing things a little different. I had wanted to take just a few moments and share with you the story of how God has been leading me this week. Just for the record, I had written a great sermon for today. It was on Mark chapter 12, the parable of the vineyard and the tenants who killed the owner of the vineyard's son. It was all about how we participate in systems of oppression and how God's judgment is upon us. At the end, there was this fantastic turn towards grace and redemption. There would have been weeping in the aisles and confession of our sinful complicity and oppression. And then there would have been joyous celebration at the redemption that God provides. You all may have lifted me upon your shoulders as we paraded in song around the school. Just for the record, that's what I think every week, and it is always a grave disappointment when it doesn't come to fruition. Anyway, it was a good sermon. But I had this realization on Friday that really materialized on Saturday. God's gentle hand upon my back. That's a fine sermon, son. You even underlined it in crayon, extra special. But it's not the right sermon. Granted, it took a while for God's Spirit to impress that, because I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. But then, of course, yesterday happened and the closing came, and so now we're all separated. And so we're going to be doing things a little different. I've been haunted all week by our prayer time last Sunday when Julie led us to reclaim the small moments. So maybe in this time when everything seems unsettled and strange, we can be reminded of what is true and significant as we reflect on some small moments that happened in my life. I wanted to share with you Exodus chapter 33, a brief reading. So the Lord said to Moses, I will do everything that you have asked for. You have found favor in my sight. I will show you my name. And Moses said, show me your glory, I pray. And the Lord said, I will make my goodness pass before you and will proclaim before you the name of the Lord. And I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will show mercy upon whom I will show mercy. But, he said, you cannot see my face, for no one shall see me and live. In John chapter 4, verse 18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. Monday started out bad. I had a cavity. Now, I am very proud of my teeth and general oral hygiene. I like to brag, but there was a pit of decay, rotting enamel, a moral failure in my toothbrushing. I was there in the dentist chair and the dentist cut too much. It took forever, the drilling, the shots. This is granted a very first world problem. I got home with my mouth all Novocained up and both children were there because it was a teacher work day. I didn't know what to do. Eventually, God's grace came into my house as Penny, showed up. She started doing some yard work and I thought it was a great idea for the children to join me, so we all went out together to pick up sticks. The children fought. I yelled. I sent them to their room, which gave them what they wanted originally. And eventually, as the day went on, God spoke to me and reminded me that there is goodness in simple work. Tuesday, things got worse. We woke up early Tuesday morning with one of our children having a stomach bug. Now, this is going to shock you all, but I don't handle sickness that well. So here I am in the early morning light, and I'm panicking. I wouldn't even go into their room. Yvonne's last words to me before she went off to work was, now, they're really not feeling good. Can you baby them a bit? She leaves, and I go to the door of their room. I don't even enter into it. I stand at the door with it barely cracked, and I yell, do you need anything? And then I start throwing some crackers at them. All Tuesday, there was this growing feeling, the writing on the wall. Things are getting bad. We might be spending a couple of weeks inside quarantined. Now, we had been kind of seeing that happening. We weren't going crazy, but we might have bought an extra can of beans every now and again at the store over these last couple weeks. trying to be ready. This is how epidemiologists tell you to deal with pandemics. The virus can't spread if you're not around other people, and it's better to overreact a little bit now than to underreact and have a much, much more severe problem later. A friend of mine is actually at a pretty large and influential church in another town, and he has doctors and lawyers and CEOs on his board. And they were having a meeting earlier in the week to plan, and one board member expressed this very legitimate frustration at everything that's happening and said, this is all going to blow over and not be a big deal. And another board member who just happened to be the vice president of the local hospital spoke up and said, it might, but what if it doesn't? What if all this doesn't blow over? Wouldn't it be better to err on the side of grace? Wednesday night. I'm going to come back to Wednesday morning because it's interesting in hindsight how in those moments on Wednesday morning, God's presence laid the foundation for what was next. So Wednesday night, the rumbling started. I was tired and a little anxious. The first tremor came that afternoon as Wake County schools canceled all of the field trips that they had planned. We in the Ward household had several things coming up with our kids, and we had to get out our calendars and figure things out. We'd gone to bed early, and I was there watching the ACC tournament, Syracuse whooping up on UNC. And there was this little blip at the bottom of the screen. NBA suspends season. It didn't really register. I had been thinking about maybe staying up later that night and watching the Pelicans play. I feel this great connection with Zion Williams. You see, he went to Duke and I went to Duke. He's this phenomenon of athletic power and dominance on the basketball court, and I went to Duke. The game started at 10:30, and I was already half asleep, and it didn't really register. And then there was a news break. The role was playing with the players standing around in their warm-up gear, and all of the fans were starting to be ushered out of the arena, and I remember thinking, oh, this is serious. Thursday and Friday kind of were a blur of weirdness and activity. They were days of meetings and news and events. The ACC tournament was canceled. March Madness was canceled. Colleges were canceled. Travel bans were extended and then lifted and then clarified. Wake County Public Schools started canceling all sporting events. Flattening the curve started trending on Twitter. The idea is that it's not even really the fatality rate that's really the greatest danger in these pandemics. That's tragic and that's concerning as that is. It's really when too many people get sick all at once. And then the area's medical capacity is overtaxed. So even when it's not, those non-serious cases get worse and worse and worse, and you have this precipitous spike and then a crash. So what public health people are really trying to do is keep that spike from happening, even if that means that the annoyance and the trouble of all this lasts a little bit longer. In the midst of this, I was dealing with this gut reaction that, isn't this kind of like the flu? And I started reading and found out, no, it's actually not. The flu has an estimated 1 billion cases worldwide. Here in the United States, it ranges from 9 to 45 million. Of those billion cases, about 0.1% are fatal. And that's pretty consistent year on year. The fatality rate for this thing seems to be holding at 3%, which is 20 to 30 times more deadly. And it could possibly come down, but it hasn't so far as it's gone from country to country. And then there's some really good reasons for that fatality rate not coming down. For the flu, we have vaccines and antiviral treatments. We have immunity inside of us because we've had the flu before. Coronavirus is believed to be twice as contagious. You know, the flu usually passes from one person to one person. COVID-19 seems to pass from one person to two or even three people at a time. But maybe the most worrying thing in this whole is the unknown. We have decade upon decade of flu research. We know where the flu starts, and we know how it moves, and we know where it's going to show up and how long of a period of time it's going to last. Right now, we got nothing. So it's dangerous to compare. All of this is happening in my head on Thursday. It's rolling around and I'm not sure what's going to happen. Then the UNC bishop comes out and recommends that all their churches take a couple of weeks off, not just from services, but even from being in the same room. You can't be, unless you can be 6 feet apart from each other and have bathed in Purell. Friday was spent nervous, waiting, uncertain, trying to make plans, trying to imagine and read the tea leaves of what Wake County Public School was going to do. And so here I am on those days reading these articles and trying to educate myself on the best public health practices and piece something together about epidemiology. And I'm all over the place. On the phone with some people and they're like, it's not that big of a deal. And I'm telling them, no, you don't understand. The world is on fire. And I'm on the phone with other people who are really freaking out. And I'm like, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. I'm going back and forth with the stewards and the trustees about what we need to do and who needs to know. We had some meetings with people who were concerned about the church and had these great ideas on moving us forward. And internally, I'm a basket case. Within me is this growing anxiety and tension, trying to process and decide. So it was 10:30 or 11 on Thursday evening. I just finished up the newsletter article and hoped, and it was going to help. It wasn't helping me. I was all hopped up on adrenaline and other stress hormones. And I closed my computer to pray for a few minutes. And the words from a friend came to my mind. He said, this all won't matter. In a few months, we're all going to have moved on. Toilet paper will be on the shelves. And it was right there in that place of nervous anxiety and uncertainty that I was reminded of what happened on Wednesday morning. Wednesday morning, we had a pastor's meeting for the area's Nazarenes pastors. And we were gathered around a table sharing Thy Kingdom Come stories. This year at Mission Advance Conference, that's going to be the theme. We're going to share about how we have seen God's kingdom spark and grow around us. I shared about people in our congregation who are turning coffee shops into ministry centers by loving and praying with the staff. About people who are spending their time caring for strangers in senior living facilities. About people who in our church just show up and said, I thought you could use some help with your bushes and yard work. Another pastor shared about the ebb and flow of worship leaders. Sometimes he said it's just me and a YouTube clip with the ads playing before. But then very recently, a 16-year-old came up and said, I think God is leading me. And she started taking over the planning. Eventually, someone else was there with musical talents. They stepped up. A guitar appeared one Sunday. Someone grabbed an egg shaker. And now there are these teens and this team that is diving in to make the sound better, to make worship grow. He said, it's crazy and chaotic. But it's so exciting to see the way that God moves in unexpected ways to bring up people. Another pastor shared of her kingdom moment. It began back at the end of November when she got a call on a Sunday morning. We walked in to find our baby unresponsive and we're on the way to the emergency room. The next 3 days were spent in the pediatric ICU. The moment came when the doctor said, there's nothing more we can do. The parents looked at their pastor and they said, we want you to baptize him. A few moments and frantic calls, they found a photographer and she came in. Finally, the moment came and all the cords were unhooked and they baptized him right there. She said he died a few hours later. But I have these haunting pictures. I can't share them at the district assembly. They're too painful and they're powerful. Another pastor spoke up softly. Those pictures are too holy, like the face of God. You can't look at them. At this point, we're all in tears, but she had more to share. For that story that began in such tragedy went on. This family, in the midst of this unspeakable and all too common situation, they had invited some friends to come to church. This new couple had been there just a couple of weeks, and they casually mentioned to another couple of the church that they had this big anniversary coming up, and they invited them. They were going to receive their 5-year pin from AA. Now, Alcoholics Anonymous marks the seasons of life as you go on without being abstaining and being, admitting you're an alcoholic and going to meetings, and they have these times of celebration. So here you had two families that didn't really know each other in this powerful moment of vulnerability and connection and the kingdom. And we were all sitting around the table at Panera, amazed at this God that comes in such surprising ways. And we felt the Spirit around us. I left there and I was on my way to the hospital. I got a call from Gary Naron letting me know about the Wednesday prayer meeting that he had been at. He said, "Pastor, I just want to let you know that God showed up this morning. We were praying and the Spirit moved upon us." I said, "I don't know how God could have been there because God was clearly with us or at Panera." I got to the hospital. Like some of you, I'd been worried about Harold and praying for him all week. Sitting in that room, all I could think about were the complications that could happen. Here's an 89-year-old man getting stents in his heart. It'd be one thing if it was me, old and bitter, angry at the world, but this is Harold. He's so sweet and kind. I'm sitting there trying to talk with him about confessing his sins and stumbling around the seriousness of all this. He did his little chuckle, and then he got serious. And he looked me right in the eye and he said, "Pastor, I hear what you're trying to say, but it's going to be okay. I trust the Lord, and it's going to be okay." Perfect love casts out fear. We might not have a church for a couple weeks, but it's going to be okay. Some of us will probably get this coronavirus, but it's going to be okay. And even if something worse happens, and we as a church experience loss, well, we trust in the Lord, and it's going to be okay. And when we see the kingdom of God sprouting around us in the most surprising places, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, and even right here on Facebook, we will dance and sing because we have trusted in the Lord, and it's going to be okay. Let us pray. And now, O Christ, we pray that your Spirit will be upon us all. And may in this time of separation our faith grow. And may we trust in you and hear your voice reminding us that it will be okay. And now may the blessings of God be upon you all on this day of Sunday rest.